This is Mitch, and welcome to the Real Estate Investor Summit podcast. I have Jen Duplessis on the line, and she's going to help us. I don't know, so many people go out in the world and they have a full-time job or they have a career, but they're trying to break out and become their own person. And it's very difficult to manage the time to figure out what to do first so that you can work your way out into a new life, leave the one that you've been doing for 10 or 15 or 20 years and work your way into a new life where you're your own business. And I think that's very difficult for a lot of people. I think it's difficult for anyone. I had both things going for a long time, and I had to burn the candle at both ends. But you can burn out pretty fast, and if you don't make some headway, you can get discouraged real fast. So we're going to be talking to Jen Duplessis right now about how to maybe overcome that challenge to take the next step in your life. So first of all, Jen, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited, and it's a Monday morning, right? I had a great weekend, and I'm just ready to hit the road again this week.
There you go. So are you over in you're in West Virginia right now?
I'm in Virginia, Northern Virginia. Yeah, west of DC, but not yet into West Virginia.
Okay. We were talking before the show, and she was doing a group coaching, and a bear walked past her window. And it was time she'd seen a bear and since she'd lived there. So I keep watching the window over here on your left, make sure the bear's by there.
Yeah. Well, I posted it online so you can see it. I was a chaotic moment. That's for sure.
Well, hopefully no bears come during the interview. Right. Okay. So tell us a little bit about your history. When you had like a 35-year career in mortgage lending where you took great pride in not just doing the easy, simple FHA and conventional loans, but you also helped all the investors with their wrap mortgages and their, trying to find money for their rent houses and all that. Some of the more challenging stuff. But tell us more about your history.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me on the show. I'm so excited to be here and to share just as much content as we possibly can and as much value, right, in the time that we have together. You're right. I left a 35-year career. My degree is in architectural design and construction engineering, and somehow I got into mortgages. Nobody goes to school for that. I wish people did because they'd learn more about finances. But I spent 35 years, top in the country. And quite frankly, I got to the point where, one of my niches was investors because my entire family as investors, we are investors. And I kind of got bored after a while and said, there's got to be more for me than just the typical, 30-year fixed rate loan for a client who's looking to buy a house. And because my niche was investing, I always had people come to me and say, do you know anybody who can do a more private second mortgage? Do you have any hard money lenders? Do you have any other sources? So, I did a lot of research, and part of it came to fruition because I too had gone beyond the traditional financing. I couldn't get traditional financing. So I had to find outlets and sources for myself as well. And that's where that kind of came up. So I started going, wow, there's a whole world out here of fix and flip. There's a whole world of, buy and holds. There's wrap mortgages. There's lease options. There's tax liens. There's all kinds of things that we could, I could be tapping into and helping investors grow their wealth. Right? That was really what it was, is how could I help them get better, bigger, better at growing their wealth and realizing their legacy and dynasty.
That's one of the things I'm real fond of is wrap mortgages.
Yeah.
We'll buy about 120 houses this year in 2019.
Yeah.
We'll wrap, I use all private money to do that. Mm-hmm. And so we'll sell or finance about 80% of that 120 or no, I'm sorry, about 80 of those 120 houses we'll
use
own.
wrap. Yeah, and that's my primary way of buying these days. I used to just buy and hold traditional financing, and then later, would gain capital, and then when I had enough capital, I'd buy another one. And then I stumbled upon wrap mortgages, about 4 or 5 years ago. And that's really all I've been doing ever since. And I love it. I absolutely love it. I love helping people because for me, it's the buyer on the one side and obviously the seller, you're helping them, but it's also the buyer too, getting them into home.
There's a third person you're helping. In my case, at least, I'm doing all this with private money. So there's a lot of people that are retired who are sick and tired of making 1 or 2% at the bank
if they're making
rate.
it.
and they're sick and tired of gambling in the stock market, not knowing what the hell they're going to make, if they're going to make anything, or when they can spend it, or when to get in, or when to get out. And here I am, offering them 6 to 8% with a real piece of real estate behind it. And for some people, it's neither here nor there. But for a lot of people who didn't have a lot of savings, like maybe they only had in their entire life, they managed to save 400 to 600,000.
Right.
The difference in income between 1% and 2% and 8% is huge difference in their life.
Yeah.
Gigantic.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And, and even today, I mean, the stock market had another high yesterday. And so, we're coming up to the point where when we have this kind of a trend, that we're looking at finding a recession here soon, and rates are going to drop, which means rates drop in your bank account.
Yeah, people tell me all the time, well, I make a lot better than 8% in the stock market. And I said, well, so you've taken your money out? And they said, no. And I said, well, then you haven't made anything.
Any money.
Talk to me about when you pull it out, because when you pull it out is critical.
Right. It's like a margin, right? It's like a margin. It's dream money until you actually, yeah, absolutely.
All right. So let's say we have these people out there, and there's hundreds of thousands of them at least.
Yeah.
And they're dreaming of a better life. I mean, they have a job and they're doing okay, or maybe they're not even doing okay. I mean, eventually you just outgrow your job. And the longer you're with it, the less your job seems to accommodate you emotionally and financially in most cases. So, I mean, the way to, instead of begging for pay raises or hoping for pay raises, one of the things to do is just go out and start your own business. And then, if you pick the right business and you're dedicated enough and you get educated enough, maybe that business replaces your job and then more, and the sky's the limit for you. What's the average person that's coming to you and saying, help me? Who's that person?
Yeah. Small entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, people that are doing exactly what you're saying. They've had a career and they said, now it's time to, go to another line of business. And of course, right now, small businesses make up, almost 90% of all businesses in the country. It's crazy, but they don't survive. That's the problem. They rarely make it through a year. And those that make it past 5 years are really the ones that are going to be successful. And so the one thing that I would say is not to chop off one job and start a new job, but to build a bridge between the two, so that you have that, it's, kind of like a holding strategy. You're in a holding strategy with your job, but let's build an exit strategy for your position and not just cut it off and go someplace. And that's one of the things that I hear so many people doing, is just saying, I had it and I threw up the towel and I decided that I was going to, become a solopreneur, but they don't have the skills in business to be a solopreneur. They may not have the skills which are required, which is all marketing and sales and branding and who are you? And so they don't really have those skills. And so then they fail, and then, oh gosh, that's the worst thing in the world. And so then they start chasing all these shiny objects that they see of all these cool ways to make money. Maybe I'll sell stuff on Amazon. Maybe I'll sell stuff on eBay. Maybe I'll be an investor, right? So I would just say that if you're getting to the point, and I was in my career, that teachers after teaching 35 years want out. Military people want out after 35 years. I'm from Colorado Springs, Colorado originally, so very big military area. You just want out. And after 35 years of lending, I wanted something more, something more that would give me a challenge. But I knew that I couldn't cut off, $700,000-$800,000 income and go to zero. That's just not possible. And it would, if I did that, it would suck up all the savings that I ever did, right? So years, and I'm using that as an example, but because I was in lending, I bought my own product. And that's one of the things that drives me crazy about real estate agents, is that most of them don't own real estate. It's amazing. So it's like being, I don't know, it's like being a Mary Kay consultant and saying, you should buy Mary Kay and have makeup, but I don't wear makeup.
Yeah. I one of the times I laughed the hardest was I was with my partner. We were with the biggest, best foreclosure attorney in town. We went over to his office to get him to take over our foreclosure needs. And we were talking to him. We asked him, well, how many properties do you own? I mean, certainly, you're in the foreclosure business. You must find all kinds of deals all the time. His answer was, no, I wouldn't touch the stuff. It's too litigious.
Right. Yeah, I think that's.
I said, well, then would you please just tell me about the ones that you think are really good? And he says, I don't think any of them are any good. And I'm like, man, this guy's really sick.
Yeah. And you know, that's the thing is we find so many people that are like that. And so, you know, so what I started doing, or what my husband and I started doing, is we started accumulating properties over years and years and years. We bought our first home when we were 19 before we got married, and we don't have it anymore. We sold it eventually, but you know, we just started accumulating homes over the period. And I knew that I had that residual income, that mailbox income coming in from my buy and holds. But I wanted more. And so I had to learn how to do these wraps. That's why I said I started doing them about 4 years ago. And it was part of my exit strategy because I retired from lending a year ago. And I learned for 3 years, you know, running this crazy you know, one of the top producers in the entire United States. And I had to find time to learn how to run a business on the side so that I could build that bridge, so that I could finally have that freedom that I was always hoping for, you know, and not being tied to the job, but being able to be tied to my lifestyle.
Okay, so this is what Jen wants to help people do, is make that bridge between your current life and the life that you're trying to build and the business that you're trying to build. So you have a giveaway for our listeners. It's 7 strategies to jumpstart your business. And it's actually like reset, you know, like if you've been out there already trying to do this, it's kind of like a way to refocus, bring in these 7 steps, start to reanalyze what you've been doing against these 7 steps and see if there's some adjustments to make so that you can keep progressing in your side endeavor or your side gig until it puts your job out of business.
Strategy. Yeah. Your exit strategy. You know, you're really just growing that bridge to exit, you know, wherever you're at. Now, if you're not in business and you're already saying, okay, I want to be an investor. And so I already quit my job or I want to be a solopreneur and I already quit my job. But you're struggling. This is what those 7 steps will do too, is say, okay, let me just regroup and see where I stand and where I need to go. To be successful. Because again, a lot of people just don't possess that business mentality, that entrepreneurship mentality in a typical job.
Yeah, everything is a lot more personal. When you're placing ads for your company, you just got to place the ad. When you're placing ads for your company, it's my gosh, these ads cost $150 a whack, you know?
Yeah.
I don't want to spend that $100. In my house, we're tight. Well, you can't be tight in certain things. When you're in business, you know, you can't be penny smart and dollar dumb because you got to spend some money sometimes and take a chance. There's ways to do that stuff. What is like one of the number one mistakes people make?
You know, as you're talking,
or should I say, what's one of the number one things they need help with, but they're not even aware that they need help with it?
Yeah. Well, and as you're talking about that, I'm thinking, you know, that one of the things that happens is when you have a job is you go to your job every day, whether you like it or not, right? You have to go. When you become an entrepreneur,
you don't have to go.
You don't have to go, but you still have to have that mentality of doing things you don't like to do, even when you don't feel like doing them. Because if you stop doing them, if it's an avoidance tactic, you know, well, I really don't want to learn how to do website stuff. I really don't want to have to do mailers to people for foreclosures. I really don't want to have to network, right? You don't feel like doing these things, your business won't move forward. So the biggest mistake is, you know, hiding behind all of the busyness of the business, right? And not forging forward. And so what I learned in my book, I wrote a book called Launch, How to Take Your Business to the Next Level. And what I learned is that people really know what they need to do. They just don't know how to do it. And so it's learning the how, because once you know the how, then it's like, okay, easy. Now I know what I need to do. So I'd say the biggest thing is not knowing how to do something and then falling back into that busyness and finding distractions so you don't have to do what you really don't feel like doing because you don't know how to do it.
I saw a meme the other day on social media. It said, I knew I was headed in the right direction when my life got uncomfortable.
Yeah, no kidding. You know, the great Les Brown, and I tour with Les Brown and speaking, the great Les Brown says, you have to suck to get unstuck.
What? Explain that to me.
You have to suck at what you're doing to get unstuck. And what happens is we want to be perfect in everything, and we don't, we try to work on perfection instead of progression, right? And so just take the steps, take the progress to move forward, move the needle on your business every day. And what we do is we don't want to look bad, and we don't want to, but success is a series of failures. I mean, that's really what it is that you learn what you shouldn't be doing and what you can't be doing. And here's another thing he says is that if you're let me think how it is. If you're casual about your life will be a casualty.
Wow, I like that one. If you're
Yeah.
casual in your life will be a casualty. I wrote a book called My Life in a Thousand Houses, Failing Forward to Financial Freedom. I mean, right there in that byline, the subtitle of the book. And I was chastised a lot before I put it out. They said, "Are you really going to put this out?" And I said, "Yeah. I mean, what's your angst?" And they're like, you're falling down a lot in this book. And I said, well, that's how I learned to
Yeah.
I kept morphing. I'd fall down, I'd get back up, I'd dust myself off and go, well, that sucked. How do you keep that from happening again?
Right.
And you figure out, and you talk to your friends, and you get in your round table and go, okay, what clause do I put in my contract to stop that from happening? Or how can I stop that from happening? And then when you found something that really accidentally, and I did almost everything on accident, both the failures and the successes were almost, some of the biggest successes were on accident. But then I would take notice, like, okay, that was great. That made a lot of money. How do you duplicate that? How do you duplicate that? And you go back to the same people and go, okay, this is what happened. How do I make this happen more often? How do I make it happen faster? Is there a way to get a pipeline of this happening? And
Don't we wish there is? But it's all individual. I mean, that's the thing is you can, there are, again, what I say is that a lot of us weren't born entrepreneurs, right? We had a job. And so we just don't possess the skills, and we take that leap. And if you think about anything in your life, think back in your life, a time where you were trying to achieve success, you wanted to win an Olympic medal, you wanted to be the best football player, you wanted, if you played instruments, you wanted to be the best player of those instruments, whatever it was, or you're a mechanic and you wanted to win some award. Think about the activities that you did to get there. You wanted to run a 26 or a marathon, right? What are the activities that you did? And you think, well, I worked on my nutrition, and I ran a mile a day, and I walked a mile a day, and then I ran a mile a day, and then I did this. But you were really laser focused on all those activities. We have to implement those same tactics in what we're doing now, right? So what could you implement that you did that made you very successful at one point in time? And implement those same tactics today. And then what could you improve on what you're doing today, right? And so if, you come home and you're exhausted mentally and physically from your job, and you sit in front of the boob tube for 2-3 hours a night, what would be, the result if you instead dedicated 1 hour or half an hour this night, and then get to the point where you're comfortable, you can't wait to get home to spend 3 hours learning about your new entrepreneurial business of real estate. Maybe you need to study contracts. Maybe you need to do research, right? But you have to start somewhere. And it's just the sitting back and not the leaning in, and people just, success isn't an entitlement, it's hard work.
yeah, well, I'm on my 4th book, and that's how I'm about to finish my 4th book. And that's how it gets done. You either, and I find it's almost easier to just get up an hour early from 5 to 6, where there's nothing going on and no one's there. And you even take time to do little things like make sure you have an automatic coffee maker, so the coffee's like ready at 5 sharp. It's brewing 15 minutes before. It's ready and it's hot. So I just go, I do the coffee, I go upstairs, I turn on the computer, I'm writing by 5:02, and I got an hour to do that. And a lot of times it's just the start that's the most difficult, because an hour seems to go by like that, and I don't want to stop. I'm in the groove. I'm like right there, and I don't want to stop. Sometimes I can go 2 or 3 hours before I have to go do whatever it is I have to do for the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, because if you think about shifting a car, the RPMs on first gear, it takes a lot of RPMs on first gear, but then when you make that shift, it's easier and easier, and the RPMs are lower, and all of a sudden you get into that groove. It's getting yourself into the groove. It's funny. I wanted to call my